on sort of what people have identified as hopefully innate human characteristics. So one, this circle, considered a sort of perfect symbol, is here broken, which will hopefully sort of make these future generations of people afraid that this thing has the potential to break this perfection. It also uses a bright color. There's discussion about whether or not these symbols should try to have the markings of poisonous creatures that other people might be familiar with. So, red and black often are often found in poisonous creatures. And there's actually, I didn't show it because it's an hour long and that would have been the entire lecture, but there's a very interesting documentary about a long-term, sort of a permanent project in Finland to create a disposal site. And one of the interesting questions is, how they're going to mark this thing and convince people not to try to open this up. Another strategy, which I couldn't find a picture of, is there apparently one of the means, and this, I guess this is sort of like an analog to the hieroglyphics, is to show a progression of constellations in the sky, so night constellations, over the next, say, 50,000 years, or however long it's going to take for these particular toxins to become not harmful to humans, with a frowny face at the beginning and a smiley face at the end. So the idea that hopefully they'll read this and recognize, oh yeah, right, I recognize our place in this constellation, see that in fact we need to wait a much longer time before we get into this treasure. Now, by means of concluding, and then I'll take questions, I want to return actually to Japan, and this is Colstrip, Montana. This is not Japan, but this is near where a historian of Japanese history named Brett Walker, who is sort of the inspiration for this lecture, lives. And Brett Walker offers a powerful and deeply troubling reading of the paradox between the holistic response that the ubiquity of toxins can inspire and our enduring capacity to compartmentalize that production of those toxins and their victims. So Walker writes, when artifacts of modernity cause pain, the factory or mine and the nation that supports and depend on it convert from artifacts of modernity to weapons. Conversion most people are unwilling to accept because it represents a challenge to the world as they know it. The price of this recognition is simply too high, and so the pain of the victims of industrial disease is transformed into a form of less than dignified and certainly not always shared sacrifice for the nation. Pain is safer expressed this way, rather than as a civilization-destroying natural impulse. Those suffering from industrial disease, having the potential to destroy our world, become ghosts. Now, in the effort to not leave you on too dark a note, perhaps we can take take some relief from the great cultural theorist Britney Spears, who reminds us, that don't you know that you're toxic? Thank you. Question? Yeah.
So are there any good examples that you found with using nuclear energy for energy for houses, America, cars?
Sorry, yeah, absolutely. So
It's not taking crap all on.
Yeah, no. I don't want to give it too dark. I think what and so that I should take heed of that. Nuclear energy is sort of paradoxical because on the one hand, it's incredibly clean, except for the toxins, right? And if the toxins could be controlled, it would be a source of energy that would help alleviate many of the problems that other energy sources produce. And so I think that there's plenty of people who try to make this sort of like, do the dangers of nuclear energy outweigh its benefits argument. And I would have to conclude that the people who say that in fact the benefits outweigh the dangers are in fact right. Sorry, that was kind of a flip there. I think that the benefits do outweigh the dangers. But it's amazing that that only started now. When I came yesterday, that was happening. So anyways, that's awesome.
I disagree.
Yeah, seriously. But the problem is, like, as I was discussing, the fear of this nuclear toxicity is so potent that you know, and for many good reasons, that it's often proved an obstacle to the expansion of this industry. And you know, whereas deregulation or lax regulation in the case of, say, like coal production has major consequences, they're often not as sort of apocalyptic.
And more wide range for people.
Yeah, like they don't, I mean, you don't, I just mean like it's not as sensational, right? Like when the 3 Mile Island accident has this sort of like staying power in the public mind, even though, you know, if you took, say, like a few of the coal plants in the area and you looked at their contributions to decreased human life expectancy, they would probably be great, right? But it's this, it doesn't, like, I think that the bomb is really important in the sense of just kind of destroying the power of this stuff, and also just it's like really incredible toxicity. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
But that's a really interesting question because I mean, there's you know, I mean, like Germany, for instance, which is better among many of the industrial countries in reducing its CO2 emissions, is relying heavily on nuclear energy to get there, and it kind of has to. So, yeah, it's an interesting question. Yes.
Can you go back to the Aspen slide and help me read there. So where?
Yeah.
Where's
Okay.
the toxic in this?
Great question. So, Smuggler Mountain was a gold and silver mine in the late 19th century. It's about 60 miles, if you guys remember Ludlow from the Andrews Reed, it's about 60 miles west of Ludlow. And the gold and silver mining produced toxic heavy metals as a byproduct of that production. And they just sort of lay dormant in the soil. This was, you know, not developed area. And then beginning in the 1980s, when the outlying areas around Aspen began to be increasingly developed for second home communities, the stirring up of that soil, and as well as the recognition that the groundwater, that those heavy metals have leached into the groundwater, makes this a place in which humans have had to you know, deal with the toxins of 100 years before.
So is this a Superfund site?
This is a Superfund site, yeah.
So all that development has been abandoned?
Yes.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I think for a while they tried to use bottled water, but I think that it was going to be such a problem with selling homes in a new second home community like that that they abandoned the site. As far as I know.
In your research, how have you found like the effect of toxicity on property values, and how that's looking back on the sorting out the toxic and the connection with folk and all the other the neighborhood grading systems and stuff. Did you find that toxic levels and oh, this area actually has a huge arsenic. A huge arsenic deposit. Did you find that changed where people, where developers were planning on building their communities and stuff a lot?
You know, as far as I know, toxicity doesn't factor into the federal insurance or the federal support for homeowner loans. But I mean, that question of development in poison landscapes is an interesting one, and certainly once places like say Smuggler Mountain had in fact opened for development, I'm sure that they would have found that they would struggle to get people to buy homes in these communities. So I think it's sort of on a case by case basis. Oftentimes, in recognition that these values have plummeted, there is federal action, but it's in the form of, rather than sort of trying to map all the toxic landscapes across the U.S. and then adjust their support there, it's to buy out particular homeowners. So, you know, rather than see a whole community's net worth wiped out, they'll just buy out the homes, and that's what happened in the Love Canal case.
So would there be a legal obligation, if you were the developer of this community, if you own property in a landscape like this, to reveal the toxicity, or is that not something that's?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and that's actually, I mean, the Love Canal trades on that very point, and the land had been incredibly polluted by an industrial manufacturer, and they sold it very cheaply, I think for like $1, essentially gave it away to this school board, and the school board used the land and divided the land and sold it to finance its own finances, and it was a question of sort of like how that how far back you should go in terms of how that information should spread was extensively litigated. But yeah, in the case of you can't sell someone toxic land, just pretend that it's not there if you know. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you guys.
Thank you.